You know, it's estimated that over 1,000 different martial arts styles have existed throughout human history, and learning many of them seems almost impossible. Except it's not. Welcome to Trick Theory. When a much younger Matt grew up watching Bruce Lee and Batman shows, the thought of being able to defend myself and then being able to perform any manner of awesome tricks, earning all them cool points, sounded like a pretty sweet deal. When it comes to Batman, by most accounts, from the time he was 14 until returning to Gotham at the age of 26, Bruce traveled around the world where he studied everything he possibly could, enrolling in colleges to study the sciences, shadowing one of the world's greatest detectives, Harry Davis, in a Robin costume that just looks breathtaking, and to learn how to fight. Where early on, Bruce began training boxing under the heavyweight champ Ted Grant, or Wildcat, paying a pretty penny for literally 1 week's worth of lessons if you were to train every day. But he didn't stop there, as Bruce soon left the USA, traveling to countries like Japan, where he trained various ninjutsu styles, judo, karate, and several assassination techniques just so he would never be caught off guard from them. From there, he traveled to China, training kung fu styles, weapons, and seemingly was always in some far-off mountain dojo located high up in the mountains, choosing to only ever train with the best of the best no matter what was required. We also know at some point Bruce went to Brazil to learn jiu-jitsu, the dance fighting that is known as capoeira, and heck, he even made a pit stop in Africa to practice Zulu stick fighting, African boxing or Dambe, and toured countries like France and the USA in secret, training parkour and even gymnastics. When Bruce traveled to Central Europe, he picked up fencing just cause he could. Batman is skilled with pretty much any weapon you could give him, from spears to swords, with Bruce basically sweeping the globe, soaking up every known and some unknown or secret styles, like the vibrating palm technique, the iron fist, and Master Oogway's death touch faster than he could throw money at it. The only thing he wasn't able to get was the Amazon secret fighting style, which he later picked up after just watching Wonder Woman fight, and even after returning from his 12-year marathon, Bruce still didn't stop, as Batman is said to master one new martial arts style every year just for fun. So, how did he do it? How did Bruce initially master 127 martial arts styles in his 12 years running abroad, which he later pumped up to 180? Well, if we look at the average time span that it would take Bruce to master a single martial art before moving on to the next one, if Bruce was gone for 12 years or a count of 4,383 days, this would mean that it would roughly take him 34 and a half days to master each martial art he came across. And this is just outrageous, but it could make total sense depending on how we look at it. You see, when first learning any kind of movement style, be it Muay Thai or parkour, which I will say if done safely is a blast, in reality it's far more likely that the first dozen martial arts styles or so that Bruce decided to learn would by far take him the longest. Once he's learned arts like boxing, Muay Thai, and any other striking art after that, like Savate or French boxing, Kung Fu, Taekwondo, these all would become so much easier, so much faster to learn. There's only so many useful ways for him to throw a punch, or even ways to grapple once he has wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and heck, 4 or 5 others under his belt. And when he does come across a style that does differ more than others, potentially offering him more of that sweet knowledge, at least he's now no longer starting from scratch. He already has a wide base that will just continue to grow larger, with the amount of actual new material that each martial art gives him reducing more and more, until by the end it's likely to take him only a couple of weeks to drain a new one dry. The thing is though, Batman is likely to have learned all of these martial arts styles even faster than that, as in his travels he was studying much more than just fighting, and to be honest, when it comes to the pure fighting ability he would need and even mental fortitude, not all styles he comes across are created equal. Some are going to be a lot more useful than others, with some becoming a staple of his style, while others he would simply take what was useful and discard the rest. After all, some sources say that there are over 200 martial arts styles in the world, but history books show that since the start of modern human civilization some 12,000 years ago, there have existed thousands of distinct styles, some for war and some for very different purposes. In the end, Bruce doesn't actually need to know that many martial arts styles. He only needed to dominate maybe a dozen or so to have an easy time just knocking out the rest. But this still leaves us with how he did it. How would Bruce Wayne, or anyone for that matter, actually go about learning, mastering these movement arts, and in such a short time? Well, this brings us to what Bruce's one actual goal is when learning any of these arts, with this simply being for him to take anything he's learning from being a conscious or deliberate action to being an unconscious or reflexive action. You see, when someone like Bruce first goes to do anything new, like for instance a specific kick or gymnastic maneuver, his brain effectively has zero data, nothing on how it should actually go about commanding your muscles for what to do, as this movement is yet to be encoded into your brain at all. And what this means is that practicing anything new, it is going to take up resources, energy, and a whole lot of effort sprinkled on top for your brain to do the thing at all. The skill takes deliberate focus and thus is considered to not be automatic or non-reflexive. But fortunately for us, the goal of our brains, of our nervous system, is to save us energy, to make our responses to situations as efficient and effortless as possible. So while one day learning a cartwheel seems like an overwhelming amount of work, the more Bruce does it, the more his brain picks up on what's going on, filing away the information into itself, so later days he can just do it without even thinking. Because what truly happens for a skill to become reflexive is that the cognitive load, the stress that your brain first goes through in telling the rest of the body what to do, it eventually dumps off of itself, both creating and shoving the new wiring it makes to areas like your spine. And hey, the more you build the skill, the more data the brain gets, and the more nerves it creates in places like your spine, thus freeing up your brain to focus on other tasks. And it's at this point that the skill has now become automatic. It has finally become reflexive, where you hardly have to think about doing it at all to make it happen. Much like when you couldn't walk as a baby, but now you can. Sure, Batman still has to make the decision to punch a thug in the face, but as for his body carrying out the expert level punch itself, it is now pretty darn easy. So train your heart out and that's all you gotta do. Except that leaves both you and our night-trotting Batman with one major issue to solve. If you're going to put your muscles, your brain, through this reflex building process, the biggest threat by far to a try-hard Bruce Wayne is pure brain fatigue, which now has me staring straight at the overuse injury I have on my hip from way too many tricks and too little actual recovery. You see, for your brain to focus, it requires chemicals or neurotransmitters to function, all carefully working together so you can focus. But the longer you focus, the more depleted these finite chemicals become, and the harder it becomes for the brain to physically keep going. And the same goes for the fatigue your muscles themselves will start to feel, and even the nerves that tell the muscles to fire off will also begin to break down with too much repeated use. In short, Batman would need to have one behemoth of a recovery routine in place, ensuring that not just his muscles but his brain and the surrounding nerves he's using fully recover so he can be more than just a sack of potatoes after 1 week of training. Perhaps the most important thing Bruce could do and should prioritize above all else, even a diet of protein and bat cookies, is getting the best sleep of his life every single night, as this is the time where your brain goes to work refilling its own chemical fuel reserves, and in later sleep stages will begin to actually repair the wear and tear that he has done to both his nerves and muscles. And Batman is not a man who enjoys tripping at the finish line. But if none of this was very interesting, then I saved an interesting fact for last. Batman practices one of the strangest to downright dangerous sleep schedules on the planet, sleeping in short micro naps, which he somehow coupled with the most extreme meditation techniques in the world, allowing him to fall asleep whenever he wants, with us going over both Batman's extreme sleep routine and meditation practices in these videos right here. Remember, it's all just a trick. See you in the next one.